What is up, you guys? This is JP coming at you with another video. This is going to be the second video about progression. Again, a lot of people don't have a progression scheme in their workout program. They just go to the gym, they pick exercises randomly, or maybe they'll have some exercises listed that they do, and they just do those exercises every single week. But again, you need a progression system in place, because if you don't have a good progression system in place, you're gonna plateau at some point, and you need to know what to do when you plateau. If you guys didn't watch my progression part 1 for beginners, I would check that video out, because I'm not gonna recap. If I do, it's gonna be kind of long, but definitely check that video out. So if you followed my progression part 1, or if you're going to, there's going to be a point where you stall on that progression scheme. Now, when you stall, what do you do? Like I did in part 1, I'm going to break up progressions based off of whether it's a large compound movement or whether it's a smaller compound movement / isolation movement. So you have big compound movements, machine exercises, machine compound movements, barbell compound movements, and some dumbbell compound movements. Then you have on this side smaller compound movements, like maybe like a face pull or something like that. And then isolation movements are all in the same group. So we're going to have group A and then group B. And progressions are going to be a little bit different. So once you stall on beginner progressions, you're going to go to an intermediate progression scheme, and it's called linear periodization. That's just what we're going to do for this intermediate progression. Again, there are multiple ways you can do things, but that's just what we're going to do for this video, so it doesn't get too complicated. So for the group A exercises, the big barbell compound movements, squats, deadlifts, bent over rows, machine presses like a leg press, all those exercises. You're going to, as you go through your training, and you could do this in how many week cycle you want. And I'm going to be very vague with certain things, because again, this is a very big topic that I'm trying to summarize into one thing. You can have as many weeks in your mesocycle as you want, as in your training program. We're just going to go with 4 weeks here to make it simple. You could have 5 weeks, you could have 6 weeks, you could structure it many ways, but we're just going to go with 4 weeks. So for your group A exercises, you're going to have 4 weeks. Now, on beginner progressions where we just kept adding weight forever and kept with the same rep range, what we're going to do is we're going to lower the reps from week 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to lower the reps. You can either lower the reps or lower the rep ranges if you're working with rep ranges. But we're going to increase the load, and we're also going to, which is the intensity and percentage of 1 rep max, so you're increasing the load. But we're also going to increase the intensity of effort, so how close you get to failure, slightly. So I'll give you an example. Week 1, let's just say I'll give you a rep range example. You can go 12 to 15 reps. Then week 2, you could go 9 to 12 reps. Then week 3, you could go 6 to 8 reps. Then week 4, you could go 5 reps. So you have 4 different rep ranges if you want. And again, if you're doing an exercise multiple times within the same week, you could have different rep ranges changing from weeks 1 through 4. Like week 1, you could have a 12 to 15, and you could also have a 9 to 12, and they'll both taper down to a 5 reps and maybe a 3 reps. So again, but that's trying not to get too complicated. So again, for group A exercise, the big compounds, you're going to have 4 weeks. You're going to have different rep ranges that lower from weeks 1 to 4. And the weight's going to go up in intensity of percentage of 1 rep max and intensity of effort. So I just give you the rep range example: 12 to 15, 9 to 12, 6 to 8, and then 5 reps. And each week, as the reps drop, you're doing less reps, which means you could put more weight on the bar. So for a bench press, you would go up in weight, up in weight, up in weight. And you're also, on top of going up in weight, you're also getting closer and closer to failure. So this week should be, your week 4 should be the heaviest week. It should be the heaviest week, and you should also be the closest to failure, which means the reps should be really grindy. Now, you do that through weeks 4, and you could do this for all big compound movements. You could do this exact scheme. So let me give you another example. Instead of doing it that way, you could do 8 reps, 7 reps, 6 reps, 5 reps. Now, because you're only dropping 1 rep, you're only going to increase the load slightly versus rep ranges where you can increase the load a little bit more. So slight increase in load, slight increase in load, slight increase in load, slightly higher RPE, and slightly higher RPE, which means you're getting slightly closer to failure. So again, this is week 4, so you're just doing that. Then week 5 will be your deload week. So what you want to do is to keep it simple, decrease volume by 33%. So cut out 1/3 of your sets And also what I want you to do is I want you to train at low RPEs, very low RPEs, train very far. Make sure you have at least 5 reps left in the tank, 5 or 6 reps left in every single set. And I also want you to work in the rep ranges of your first week. So your deload week, which is your 5th week, is going to be your week 1 rep ranges, which 12 to 15 if you're using rep ranges, if that's the rep range you pick, or 8 reps if you're just doing single reps per week, 8, 7, 6, take the 8 reps. So your deload week is going to use your first week's rep ranges. It's going to be 33% less volume, or 2/3 total volume of what you were doing. You're also going to be at a much lower RPE, so you're going to have a lot of reps left in the tank. What is this going to do? It's going to set you up for to repeat this 4-week meso or this 5-week mesocycle. The 4 weeks being the hard part, but at slightly heavier loads for each of those respective weeks. So the deload is going to minimize fatigue and prep you to run this cycle again. So when you come back and do this 5-week cycle again, try to increase load slightly for every week respectively. So in the rep range example, week 1, you use the 12 to 15 rep range for whatever exercise. Try to, whatever you use for the previous week 1, you want to go slightly heavier. Simple. Then whatever you used for previous week 2 of last mesocycle, you need to go slightly heavier for this week 2, this week's rep ranges. Or if you're using the single rep scheme, 8, 7, 6, 5, in weeks 1 through 4, you want to go slightly heavier on your week 8, your week 7, or 8, 7, 6, 5, on the respective weeks from the previous 5-week mesocycle. So again, as you can see, it's just a general, there's a general theme going on here. You're decreasing reps, you're going up in load, and then you're getting closer to failure. So week 4 should be the hardest week. And again, you're having that deload week so you can minimize fatigue. This is different from the beginner progression scheme because you're not just adding load and keeping the same rep range. You can't do that anymore. You're no longer a beginner. You reaped all those benefits. So instead of that, you have to drop the rep ranges. But because you're dropping the rep ranges, you're also, I would say that you're going to get, specificity is going to be a little bit higher in regards to strength. So that means you're going to be getting stronger, which is kind of like, even if you were working with lower rep ranges on the beginner progression, you still see more benefit in this way in regards to strength, in my opinion. So you should see, if it's structured properly, especially if you were working with the lower rep ranges, you should see a lot more benefit in this mesocycle if you start working with lower rep ranges in regards to strength. So you're going to be getting stronger. So repeating this 4-week mesocycle, you're going to get a lot of gains out of this. Now, so that was group A. You're going to do that with the big compound large movements, the barbell movements, those types of big movements I described earlier. Now in group B, the smaller compound movements like, for example, face pulls, and the isolation movements like lateral raises and bicep curls, you're going to have a different progression scheme in this intermediate progression. It's going to be slightly different. You cannot, think about it, these are smaller compound movements and they're isolation movements. You cannot increase load every single week, even if you're lowering the reps. And then especially on the next 4-week mesocycle, if you plan to keep increasing load again, it's not going to happen. Like I talked about in the beginner progression scheme, these are muscle groups and that you're working that they're smaller. They just recruit a lot less musculature versus the group A exercises. So you're not going to be able to just go up, 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 up forever. Think about it. If you were doing a lateral raise, let's just say you started off at 10s because no, you wouldn't be at 10s because you're not a beginner. Let's just say you're doing 15s or 20s. Most gyms don't even have 2.5 pound jumps. So assuming your gym doesn't have 2.5 pound jumps, 20s, 25s, 30s, 35s, there's no way you're going to be able to go up from 20 pounds to 35 pounds, even if you're decreasing the reps. Now, assuming your gym has 2.5 pound jumps, it's still large jumps, 20, 22.5, 25, 27.5. That's still a large increase for lateral raises. And that's assuming you were doing 20 pound lateral raises with perfect form. So same thing with bicep curls. And now, even if you could successfully do that one mesocycle, you need to slightly go up in load, with these smaller movements the next mesocycle, which again, you're gonna stall too quick. So instead of doing it that way, we're gonna do it slightly different. So what I want you to do is I want you to pick one static rep range that is not going to change. You can use whatever rep range you want, but for this example, I'm gonna use 12 to 20 reps. So 12 to 20. You're gonna do 12 to 20 reps. That's your range for every single week. But starting in week 1, you're gonna pick an appropriate load that lets you fall at the bottom of that rep range at an RPE of like 5, somewhere around there. Somewhere 4 to 6, around 5. If you don't know what RPE is, basically pick a load that lets you fall to the bottom of the rep range, 12 to 20 rep range, which should be around the 12 to 13 reps. That lets you have plenty of reps left in the tank. So if you're doing curls and let's just say you're doing curls with 20 pounds weights, I'll use this right here. Let's just say you want to use this progression scheme for incline presses because you don't think you're going to be able to increase that fast. We're doing incline presses, come in here, you're pressing. Let's just say you get 11, 12. You got to 12 with 30 pounds. And you're like, okay, I feel like I had 4 or 5 left, but you got to 12 reps and you feel like you had 4 or 5 reps left in the tank. 30 pounds would be a good weight to use for incline presses for you. Now, that's just an example for incline presses. You know, you might need to do that for that one. But for lateral raises, it's the same thing. And bicep curls, all these smaller exercises that recruit smaller muscles or smaller muscle groups, you need to do that for. So you want to aim for the bottom of the rep range, again, with that appropriate load. Now, that's what you do for week 1. So week 2, what you do is you don't change the rep range and you don't change the weight. Your only goal through the weeks is to slightly do more reps. But because you're not changing the weight and you're not changing the rep range, RPE is going to go up. RPE is going to go up. So in the same example, where I'm using 30 pounds for incline presses, I'm going to do more reps the next week. So if I got to 12 the first week, the second week, I should probably try to aim for 13 or 14 and just keep climbing up the rep range. So basically each week the RPE should go a little bit up. So if you have like an RPE of 4 to 6, an RPE of 6 to 7, RPE of 8 to 9, and then an RPE of 10, which is the failure, you're basically getting closer and closer to failure each week until you get to failure on week 4. These are smaller. Again, these aren't the big compounds, so you don't have a very high risk of injuring yourself. On lateral raises, you can take them to failure 1 week, and things like that. Those exercises, you can do that. So you keep doing that. Think about it. This is a better way to progress because we're not increasing load all the time. You're not doing that. You can't do that with these exercises. So just keep doing that. Now, and then obviously week 5 is the deload week as I described earlier. And then you're going to come back to week 1 on the second 5-week mesocycle. And your goal is to kind of feel out that same weight in that rep range that you picked. If you start week 1 and you're like, okay, I'm doing the same reps, I'm aiming for the bottom of the rep range, I'm leaving about 5 reps, or I'm aiming for the bottom of the rep range, but what will happen is because you've got stronger over that 4-week mesocycle, you may find that if you aim for the bottom of the rep range, you have way too many reps left in the tank. You're training at like an RPE of like 2 or 3 with the same weight that you did last time, which means now you can go up and load. So though you'll go up and load only once every 4 or 5 weeks, and you can do that often. Now, sometimes you'll try to do a 5-week mesocycle like I'm structuring here, and then you'll get back to week 1 of that next mesocycle, and you'll be like, okay, I feel like it's a slightly easier, but I feel like if I go up in weight, the RPE is going to be too high for this week. Then what you do is you just stick to that same weight and just try to make the RPEs a little bit easier for that 4-week mesocycle. And so you don't go up in weight, you don't change the rep range, you just climb up the rep range like you did the previous mesocycle with the same weight. Now, what's going to happen is because you're sticking to the same weight again, that the week 4, you should be able to hit the top of that rep range and you shouldn't be going to failure. You should still have maybe 1 or 2 left, which means that the RPEs are lower. You're not as close to failure with the same weight as you were the previous 4-week mesocycle. So again, all you're doing for these smaller groups is you're not changing the rep range. You're picking one static rep range. In this example, I said 12 to 20. You're picking a load that lets you get to the bottom of the rep range for week 1, that lets you have around 5 reps left in the tank, and then you're slowly adding reps for weeks 1 through 4 until week 4 you're training to failure. And then you're doing that mesocycle after mesocycle until that load just becomes too light for that rep range, until it just becomes too easy. Then you go up to the next weight. So as you can tell, the weight's not increasing as often as it was in group A exercises, which is the goal here because they can't. I know this video is very long. Again, when you start getting into these more advanced forms of progression, it is going to get more complicated. But if you guys have any questions, comments, leave them down below. I did believe that I said last time that this video was going to be more complicated, and it is. I still did simplify this video. Trust me, this could have been like an hour-long discussion. But again, if you guys have any questions, comments, leave them down below. I'll be more than happy to clarify this for everyone. Next time, I'll go into more advanced forms of progression, but I might have to make that like a 3-part series or something, a 3-part video. So again, any questions, comments, leave them down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.